You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for May 27th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where, just as Dr. Zaius always knew about man,
I have always known about man.
We have always known about MAGA. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Hello, Blue Gal.
Hello, Driftglass. But before we dive into our main topic, let's talk about an affliction that's going on around Democratic circles that we're going to call political cabin fever. Some people know it as silly season.
Yes.
We don't think we're doomed, and while we're definitely disgusted right now, we are not discouraged. What we are is tired.
Yes. You can't see me.
I have a feeling people out there are tired also.
You can't see me, but I'm nodding enthusiastically. Yes.
It's easy to mistake being tired for being discouraged or feeling hopeless, but they're not the same thing. And this is why we're calling it political cabin fever. Mm-hmm. In case you are unfamiliar, there is a thing called regular cabin fever. Mm-hmm. It's the feeling of irritability or restlessness experienced when a person or a group is stuck at an isolated location or in confined quarters or snowed in, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now. We're stuck in this political cabin with huge piles of MAGA shit blocking every exit. And we know this is where we will be until at least November of next year and beyond.
Yeah.
And so some people are starting to bounce off the walls, and that's understandable.
Yeah. It has echoes of COVID lockdown time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You really were, you could look out the window, you can see the rest of the world, and you can see people across the street, but you were isolated in a very real way. And a lot of us are feeling that way. We know what we're feeling. We know that feeling. You got your racing thoughts, exhaustion, ennui, crabbiness. We do get this. We get it as well. We are not immune to it. So it's understandable. But remember, if we choose, being stuck in this cabin can also be an opportunity to think deeply about how we got here and start thinking practically based on that knowledge, based on the diagnosis of how we got here, of what it might take to get us out of here. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, on with the show. And the simple fact that a whole lot of us knew all about MAGA long before it was called MAGA. Back when one branch of MAGA was called the John Birch Society, and another branch was called the Moral Majority. We recognized MAGA more than half a century ago when it was embodied by the central character in America's most popular television show for 5 consecutive seasons. Can you believe it? Network television's 5 consecutive seasons from 1971 through 1975.
I'm all alone here. I'm all alone in this house. Isn't anybody else interested in upholding standards? Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
Archie, 12% of the population is black. There should be a lot of black families living out here.
Yeah, this is only a beginning, but I think it's wonderful.
Wonderful, huh? Well, let's see how wonderful it is when a watermelon rinds come flying out the window.
We also recognize MAGA in a 33-year-old sketch by the late and great Bill Hicks.
I was in Nashville, Tennessee last week, and after the show I went to a Waffle House, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm eating and I'm reading a book. I don't know anybody, I'm alone. I'm eating and I'm reading a book. And this waitress comes over to me. What you reading for? And wow, I've never been asked that. Not what am I reading, but what am I reading for? Well, God damn it, you stumped me. I guess I read for a lot of reasons, but the main one is so I don't end up being a fucking waffle waitress. Yeah, that'd be real high on the list. Then this trucker in the next booth gets up, stands over me, and goes, "Well, looks like we got ourselves a reader." Well, what the fuck's going on? Like I walked into a Klan rally in a Boy George costume or something.
And we recognize MAGA coming out of the mouth of a henchman in a 37-year-old movie that many people consider to be a perfect movie, and I'm one of them.
Hey, man, what you reading in there? You a college boy or something? Huh? I bet you think you're pretty smart, huh? Think you could outsmart a bullet? What do you say we find out, huh? I'm talking to you! What do you say? Huh? Huh? I'm talking to you!
In politics, we paid attention during the Bush administration, and we wrote about it.
We did, every day.
Yeah. Just as John Dean was writing books and lecturing on the subject of how people with authoritarian tendencies had been drawn into the Republican Party. And what kicked that off for Dean was a book called Silent Coup, published in 1991.
Yeah, this is a little bit of no fair remembering stuff. So
This is absolutely a bit of no fair remembering stuff. Silent Coup. If you think Clinton Cash was bad, wait till you hear about Silent Coup. Although they're of the same ilk.
Yeah, same genre, same audience too.
Same audience too. This is 1991, Silent Coup. In it, the authors contended that Nixon was merely the innocent and hapless victim of John Dean. John Dean masterminded the whole Watergate thing because something, a prostitution ring that was supposedly run by the Democratic National Committee and for which Dean's then fiancée, Maureen Biner, supposedly worked. So it was his call girl fiancée and John Dean who did the whole Watergate thing at the DNC because the DNC had the call girl list.
Right.
And Nixon had nothing to do with any of it.
Just an innocent victim. Just a drive-by, really.
Uh-huh. And I can absolutely see conservatives believing this.
Oh, sure.
Ignoring the tapes, everything Nixon said about bribing everybody, getting money, Bibi Rebozo, all of that. Just absolutely closing their eyes to anything outside of what they want to believe is true. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Dean was helping the Democratic National Committee with his fiancée run a call girl ring. And the Watergate break-in was staged to gather and destroy the information, linking Dean's future wife with the Democratic National Committee's call girl ring. Now, also in this book, and I mean it, it was a published book.
It was.
Al Haig is Deep Throat.
Sure.
Actually, in reality, Deep Throat was FBI Deputy Director Mark Felt.
Oopsie.
But just like today, a whole lot of conservatives back then were perfectly willing to believe any conspiracy theory, no matter how stupid. And again, Clinton Cash, swift boating, eating the dogs, eating the cats. But if it reassures conservatives and tells them they've been right all along and they are victims, then they'll believe it.
Yeah. As you know, Vince Foster was murdered by Hillary Clinton.
By this book, Vince Foster, yeah, right, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
The Biden crime family did everything behind closed doors. Everything Trump is doing is out in the open. He's perfect. Completely transparent.
Perfect and beautiful.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
Now, you know who said that this week? The Speaker of the goddamn House said that on television.
Yeah. Well, he's stealing out in the open, so that's okay. You know, that's fine. He's doing corruption out in the open where God intended.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if you were to sneak into the houses of some Republican pillars in your community, long-time Republican pillars, you would find Clinton Cash and the Swift books, the Vince Foster books on their bookshelf.
Yeah.
Because they bought this shit to support the cause. And they read it and they believed it because it told them what they wanted to hear.
Or they didn't read it. A lot of them buy these books as talismans to prove their loyalty. Yeah. Right?
Yes, they do. But it doesn't matter because whatever filters down to them, they believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, during the course of suing the publisher, which was St. Martin's Press, Dean began looking into who was buying and reading this garbage. And it turned out it was conservatives. Oh my God, it was conservatives. And that shocked him because he thought, green eye shade, let the facts speak for themselves, morally upright, just, don't believe the hype, only believe what's practical and real. No, it was conservatives who bought this shit. And they never got over Watergate and their belief that Nixon was an innocent man who'd been betrayed by traitors in league with the Democrats, because conservative authoritarianists never get over anything, as you might have noticed over the past 50 years. They're still ass itching over Robert Bork.
Yep.
People who don't want to talk about what happened yesterday will still tell you all about Robert Bork and how, Robert Byrd was in a Klan. You know that? You're aware of that? You know the Klan? So these are all fucking, PhDs in civil rights right up until 1964. Right. And then their memory gets a little bit hazy. This is when John Dean began to get deeply interested in the growing authoritarianism he was seeing inside his own party, the Republican Party. Remember, John Dean was one of the architects of the Southern strategy. He was not an innocent man. He was there deep in the belly of the beast, and this freaked him out. So,
hired by Nixon. The reason he was in the White House was because he was one of Nixon's employees.
Yeah, he was one of Nixon's henchmen. He went to jail, He
did go to jail. Yes,
he was one of the people. So in 2006, during the depths of the Bush administration, Dean writes this book called Conservatives Without Conscience, which is a riff on Barry Goldwater's book, The Conscience of a Conservative. And he was good friends with Barry Goldwater. And that book, which was published in 1960, was largely ghostwritten, as you probably already know, some of you do, by L. Brent Bozell Jr., who was brother-in-law of William F. Buckley Jr. So this is a really tight circle of people who all believe certain things. And if you're interested, there are dozens and dozens of interviews with John Dean out there on the internet talking about this book, including this one with young Keith Olbermann from well into the before time.
I wanted to start at the very beginning. You dedicated this book to Barry Goldwater. What would he, in your opinion, having known him and having dealt with him on these political issues, have thought of the current conservative movement as it has become? And what would the conservative movement have thought of him at this point? What do they think of him now?
Well, I think right now we can say, in fact, I discuss this in the book, that Goldwater republicanism is really R.I.P. It's been put to rest by most of the people who are now active in moving the movement further to the right than it's ever been. I think the senator, before he departed, was very distressed with conservatism. In fact, it was our conversations back in 1994 that started this book. It's really where I began. We wanted to find answers to the questions as to why Republicans were acting as they were, why conservatives had taken over the party and were being followed, as easily as they were in taking the party where he didn't think it should go.
What did you find? in less than the 200 pages that the book goes into.
I ran into a massive study that had really been going on for 50 years now by academics. They've never really shared this with the general public. It's a remarkable analysis of the authoritarian personality, both those who are inclined to follow leaders and those who jump in front and want to be the leaders. It was not the opinion of social scientists. It was information they drew by questioning large numbers of people, hundreds of thousands of people, in anonymous testing where they conceded, their innermost feelings and reactions to things. And it turned out that these people were, most of these that came out in the testing were people who had been pre-qualified to be conservatives, and then they found that this indeed fit with the authoritarian personality.
These people have always been the engine of the Republican Party. The Phyllis Schlafly gals.
Yep.
And when it was politically useful to use racism or homophobia or anti-trans imagery conspiracies to fire up the base, Republican leaders have never hesitated to step on the gas and just lie. Swift boating.
Oh.
Just lie.
The Bush 2004 re-election campaign.
Yeah.
That was all about gay bashing.
Yep.
Never hesitated for a minute to use the dirtiest tactic to win at all costs. And the dirty tactic was to feed conspiracy lies to stupid people and crazy people.
And put gay marriage on the ballot.
Yep.
Even as a non-binding referendum to get evangelicals to turn out to vote.
Yep.
Yeah. The only difference between Trump and previous Republican leaders is that occasionally they were willing to tap the brakes, while Trump has been pedal to the metal from day one. So when Republicans finally tore off the last veil and nominated Donald Trump, the only people who weren't taken completely by surprise were, bloggers like us and other writers who recognized the danger signs a long time ago and had been writing about them almost every day.
Yep.
Which is why it's always fascinating to me that the very last people that the Democratic donors and consultants want to see at the table are Democratic base liberals who were right about the right all along. Though they just don't want to see them. And it's pretty clear why. Never forget that the raft of whining and kvetching and second guessing that Democrats are subject to every day. And this is when, to my mind, the Republican authoritarianism model has some advantages.
Yeah, it's looking kind of good sometimes.
And I wouldn't say good because I don't want to be locked up with anybody.
No,
but
efficient. It's efficient.
It's efficient. It's like Stalinism. It's very efficient. It's not good, but it's efficient. But yeah, the second guessing that Democrats are subject to every day from elite opinion havers and very serious people on every subject is because in the name of both siderism, those very same elite opinion havers and very serious people stood by and did absolutely nothing while the Republican Party methodically transformed itself step by step over the course of 50 years from a proto-fascist party into an actual fascist party.
Yep.
And part of that was that group of authoritarians forever wanting to believe crackpot theories that forgave them and made them innocent. And absolutely nothing except dismiss us as crackpots. Everyone who was sounding the alarm.
Yeah. I would sum this up as saying it was impossible on a biological level for David Brooks to believe that the Republican Party was what we said it was because his friends on the Acela Corridor train were not those sorts of people.
Right.
That's because those people were not the fucking Republican Party. They never were. Rush Limbaugh was the Republican Party. Gingrich was the Republican Party. These guys were the front men that gave the Birchers and the lunatics respectability. And they came to believe that they really were the party. And electing Donald Trump for the first time was a reveal that shocked the hell out of those people, out of those very same elite opinion havers and serious people who had been so ostentatiously not paying fucking attention. Even as the monster the GOP was building was already very loudly growling and roaring and stomping around in public and getting stronger and more belligerent every day because however much damage the monster was doing, because after all, smashing stuff is what the monster is supposed to do, as long as the monster was on a leash being held by respectable Republicans, because it's going to be Rubio, Blue Gal. It's going to be Rubio.
It is going to be Rubio.
Those very well-paid elite opinion havers and very serious people were only too happy to look the other way. So,
do you think that is a function of East Coast elitism?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it just too ugly to look at?
How many people do you know from, let's say, Boston who never leave Boston?
Oh, yeah. A lot.
How many people from New York do you know that think the world begins and ends at the Hudson River?
Yeah. I do.
I mean,
I know.
Really,
not all. I wouldn't blankly say that. There are some well-traveled people, but yeah.
But you've seen that comic map of New York, which is New York, Hudson River, a bunch of stuff, and then Los Angeles
and China.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is why we are flyover country. This is why nobody wants to hear from people in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Because if you put us in a room with the people they do listen to, and the people they do listen to are fellow coastal elite former Republicans, Nicole Wallace's and Tim Miller's and Sarah Longwell's. If we ever get put in the room with them, we start asking really embarrassing questions, like, where were you when your party was a mere toddler fascist party? Why were you gay people so enthusiastic with a party that was explicitly anti-gay? Why did you hire a black man to front for a racist party, knowing that your party was racist? Why didn't you throw Rush Limbaugh the fuck out of your party if you didn't like this stuff? And the answer was always going to be, if they're honest, if they're pumped up with Pentothal, it's going to be, well, we wanted to win.
Yeah.
We wanted to win. And winning
and then
meant,
we could have them for another 4 years.
Yeah. And we can kick the can down the road, but we're never going to lose control of the party. We're running the party.
Right.
We have to job out the job of putting, getting the lunatics and the bigots and the gun nuts to the polls. We have to job that out to people like Rick Wilson and Karl Rove and Rush Limbaugh. But we are running the party. They're not running it. They're hired by us to get people to the polls. We're going to do the deciding. And it turned out, no, that's not true at all. The Republican Party is the mass of people who make up the party. And the mass of people who make up the party are fucking fascist. And we told you that was true long before you were willing to believe it. And it took the nomination and the election of Donald Trump to finally knock them some fucking sense into those people, who immediately turned around and said, how the fuck did this happen? We were all bamboozled. We were all fooled. What's going on here? And then they became almost overnight their own media companies. Who went into business going, well, if you want to know how to beat these people, you have to listen to us. And of course, they were wrong about everything. And now they're basically they're the people that get invited by Democratic consultants and donors to tell
billionaire donors to tell them what to do. We're going to talk about that for a minute. They
don't invite Blue Gallon Driftglass. They invite Sarah Longwell and Tim Miller and Charlie Sykes to tell them how to do things. So now what do you do? What's to be done now that the monster has been reelected and given virtually unlimited power by the American Fascist Party and by its collaborators? Well, how about another round of hippie punching? Yay! Let's punch some lefties and blame them for everything. Isn't that a cool idea? This is from friend of the blog, friend of the podcast, friend to all, a lowborn and highborn alike, Mr. No More Nice Blog.
No more Mr. Nice Blog.
No more Mr. Nice Blog. And his terrible secret is he is nice.
He is nice.
Steve
M.
Steve M is a nice guy.
Steve M at No More Mr. Nice Blog is a nice person.
And he writes in the long form, the old school blogger long form. And I'm going to read
he writes about inside Democratic politics a lot.
Yeah. No, he's really good.
Cool.
Our blog rolls are still active and full of people who are awesome. And, let's not forget that the people who do the talking are backed up by decades of people who did the writing. Anyway, this is from No More Mr. Nice Blog. Quote, I see that anti-progressive Democrats have successfully pitched a couple of high-profile pieces. Duh. Yeah, no surprise there, because those are the people everyone wants to put in the newspaper.
Yeah, right.
The first is in the Wall Street Journal, is a story about Rahm Emanuel's all but declared run for the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination. Emanuel apparently intends to run on the slogan, Rahm, because Democrats are bad. And No More Mr. Nice Blog notes, I made that up, but it's very close to the truth.
Can I tell you guys out there in podcast land, when the Daily Beast, clickbait article about Nancy Pelosi says Rahm Emanuel would make a great candidate in 2028. And I ran over to the bathroom where Driftglass is shaving. And I said, it's over, Driftglass. And you went, what? Our marriage? What? It's over. Rahm 2028. Yeah. And the eye roll. You had shaving cream on your face and an eye roll that looks like it hurt.
And I believe I didn't say, but should have said, darling, never tell me something like that when I have a razor this close to my throat. A razor in my hand. This close to my throat. No, don't do it. Don't do it. No, and I know all about Rahm, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
But this is, and then within the post, Steve M. quotes the actual article from the Wall Street Journal, which is, quote, Rahm Emanuel, never humble about his political skills, is trying to accomplish something that seems far-fetched even for him. Push his Democratic Party, rooted in the identity politics of the left, which is surprising to me, to the center, to the center. The former congressman, White House chief of staff, Chicago mayor, and diplomat is direct about what he thinks Democrats need to do to win national elections again. He calls the party's brand toxic and weak and woke, a nod to culture war issues he thinks Democrats have become too often fixated on that President Trump has successfully used against them, unquote. So, and back to Steve M. Democratic poll numbers are bad. Ever wonder why? We know that dyed-in-the-wool liberals and progressives, are frustrated by the party's weak response to Trump. We know the Republicans have been told for decades that Democrats are history's greatest monsters. But what about the people in the middle? Why don't they say nice things about Democrats, huh? Why don't they? I think one big reason they don't is they keep being told that Democrats suck by Democrats. I believe this has a real impact on how voters vote. Here are the messages swing voters hear. Republicans say, Democrats suck. Democrats say, Democrats suck. Republicans say, we have all the answers and we're the only true patriots in America. Democrats say, we need a strong Republican Party. Isn't Liz Cheney wonderful? Under those circumstances, it's amazing that Democrats win any elections at all, unquote.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gavin Newsom, eat your heart out, by the way.
Yeah.
Here comes Rahm to steal your lunch money.
Yeah, just hold my wine. Hold my $300 bottle of wine.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think Rahm Emanuel is seriously running for president. I think he's running for ambassador to the EU or
wherever.
The Court of St. James or whatever.
He might be running. I don't know. The Senate's getting real crowded real fast.
Yeah. So,
and you know what that means, Blue Gal? More content for us. Yay. So summer of 2025 is barely underway, and Rahm is already teasing a 2028 White House bid, which actually would work out pretty great for me since I have lots of Rahm Emanuel content on my blog from his successful 2011 run for mayor of Chicago. Remember
he was mayor of Chicago for 5 minutes.
Oh, he was mayor of Chicago for like 7 years, 7 years.
6 years. It was a 6-year term.
And
during which he did not do good.
He did not do so. Well, here's the problem. The entire Daley administration was propped up by money.
Yeah.
And when the money ran out, the Great Recession, you might have heard of it. When the money ran out, Daley beat it the hell out of there. The minute he became a longer-term serving mayor than his daddy, he quit. All the people who swore they would never quit, they all followed
become
out.
Ambassador to China or something like that?
I lost track of him after that.
Trade representative to China, something like that.
But all these people who swore that this was the job of their lives, they would never quit, they bailed immediately.
Oh, absolutely.
And went to work, a lot of them, at places where, like, the parking meter industry, which had been sold to them by the mayor to raise money so he could prop up his agenda. Well, no money. You can't throw money at every problem, and that's when Rahm steps in and tries to be,
a bully. Yeah,
and it didn't work so good. And so I have a whole bunch of Ramses, the sayings
one
of
Ramses.
One
of them is headlining our podcast today.
Oh,
I put
cool.
one up.
Okay,
yeah,
I did a little artwork back before AI took all the artwork away. So yeah. Anyway,
we use AI. We should do a podcast about why we use AI at some point.
Yeah.
But
because bloggers and podcasters are lazy, Blue Gal, because we're lazy.
It's because we're collage artists, and wherever you take stuff. If I took something from Vogue magazine and cut it up and pasted it together like my mother did throughout her whole artistic career.
And her stuff hung in museums.
A computer generates something and you use it and you modify it. It never comes out perfectly the way you want it anyway, so it always needs some zhuzhing. Anyway, that's it. All right. So then No More Mr. Nice blog then directed his readers to this in the Washington Post, the Bezos Post. Quote, Democratic troubles revive debate over left-wing buzzwords.
Yeah.
Now, guys out there, I want to ask you something. Tell me if you've heard any Democrats, like Democratic politicians, using these words in a speech. Okay.
In your area, in your neighborhood, at town hall meetings, ever, under any circumstance, Democratic politicians, not people who are teaching classes in this, which is completely understandable.
Not people who are selling T-shirts on Etsy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Democratic politicians. From intersectionality to equity, many say jargon is alienating key voters, but progressives say inclusive language is vital.
Which progressives? Which progressives are they quoting, Blue Gal? Under what circumstances?
I have no idea.
Nah, they're making
this
shit up.
This is the first time I've said the word intersectionality ever, I think. I don't get it. Anyway,
I know what it means, and I know where it comes from, and that's fine because I love big words. I've seen it
on T-shirts. I have seen it on T-shirts.
Well,
and it's because there are people within the liberal coalition for whom it's important, and I'm not arguing with you on that.
Right.
But this article is about buzzwords. It is not about intersectionality as a concept. It is about a buzzword.
that all these Democrats are using.
That all these Democrats use all the time, and it alienates people in the heartland where we're sitting right now. Okay. Maybe it's using the word oligarchs instead of rich people, or referring to people experiencing food insecurity rather than Americans going hungry, or equity in place of equality, or justice-involved populations instead of prisoners. As Democrats wrestle with who to be in the era of President Donald Trump, a growing group of party members, especially centrists, is reviving the argument, and Driftglass just got a headache, is reviving the argument that Democrats need to rethink the words they use to talk with the voters whose trust they need to regain. They contend that liberal candidates too often use language from elite, highly educated circles that suggests the speakers consider themselves smart and virtuous while casting implied judgment on those who speak more plainly. Hardly a formula for winning people over, they say, unquote.
Yeah.
And I am reminded of a town hall for veterans that Pete Buttigieg did recently, within the past 4 weeks, where a vet stood up and said, I am grateful to you for speaking in complete sentences.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know when this happened. I mean, we lived through it. You can't pin an exact date on it. But at some point, speaking correct English in complete sentences and using the right word to say what you want to say, being precise about that, became a snobby, elitist, asshole thing to do. We're supposed to grunt and say "fuck you" a lot, which we do anyway. And this is just insulting and stupid. So what I do mentally when we talk about these sorts of things, and we're going to get onto the New York fucking Times in just a second. So listen to how close the language of those two articles are to each other. But when you hear people who are feel talked down to by highly educated elites, substitute for that stupid people who are stupid. When you hear phrases like the average voter can't be bothered to understand or don't have time for, that's a buzzword. That's a journalistic buzzword for lazy, who don't want to do the basic homework
or
to
cowardly.
Be a citizen.
Or cowardly.
But I don't want to learn anything. We did a whole thing about this last week about people who are going to do their own research and never do because they're fucking lazy. They don't want to take 10 minutes away from their gaming.
But they also
anything.
don't want girls to think that they're bigoted against women or against black people, because that means they might not get laid.
Yeah.
So they say, I'm going to do my own research. What they're going to do is either not vote or vote for Trump.
Right. So
because of their tiny little white penises. Anyway.
So what these consultants are talking about is how do we appeal to stupid and lazy people? But they can't say that.
Right.
Because and those are, stupid and lazy are very small words, very understood. They're not elitist words at all. But it isn't elitist to use correct language. It's what people used to aspire to. It's what parents would insist their children do at home. It's what immigrant families demanded their children do, go to school and learn good English. That is the American tradition. Turning ignorance and rage and paranoia into virtues. The Democrats should seek to, should sneak into, because they won't listen to us any other way, is madness, is just fucking madness. And
I don't mind if a candidate tailors their message to, and I actually had to ask Junior Dude to do this with a letter he had written, because he was applying for a job, and I said, you need to dumb this down a little bit, because he just had it was too formal. It was too formal for the job he was applying for, and I didn't tell him to be stupid about it.
No,
but I was helping him edit it, and I said it needs to be at a 6th grade reading level, not a master's degree reading level.
Well,
and it is okay for a candidate for office, who needs lots of different kinds of people from different walks of life to understand his message, to tailor it to middle school reading level, let's say.
And we've said this before. We use a different vocabulary in church than we do on a podcast.
Right.
We use a different vocabulary talking to the younger kids when they were 6 and 7
Mm-hmm.
than when they're 22 and 21.
Right.
They're the same bright, wonderful young people, but they and we didn't talk down to them when they were kids. We just understood their vocabulary was limited and there was stuff they didn't understand, and we coaxed them along that road, but we didn't ever say, oh my God, what do you mean you don't understand intersectionality? Oh my God. And we didn't talk down to them. We talked to them, but it was on the assumption that they would get, more and more words into their vocabulary. Their brains would develop. They'd be curious. What we're asked to believe is grown-ass adults living in this country who have voted for Donald Trump and Republicans 7 times.
3 times, right.
Are so fucking stupid, are so fucking narrow and inbred and dumb that if you use the proper language to talk to them, they're going to run away from you and scream that they're being oppressed.
Right.
And if that's the case, and I believe it's the case in a lot of cases, then we aren't the problem.
Yep.
The dum-dums who listen to Fox News all day and have for 30 years are the fucking problem. And the people who want to be in the middle between those two things, they're the problem. And we need to find a way to reach them. And the way we reach them is by, well, that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
All right. Let me read this article from the New York fucking Times.
Yeah.
6 months later, Democrats are still searching for the path forward. The party's standing is startlingly low after a defeat that felt like a cultural rejection. It was 49-51.
Yeah.
What comes next? Question mark.
Now imagine yourself, in 2020, when Joe Biden won, take every occurrence of the word Democrats in here and substitute Republicans.
Yeah.
Take everything that felt like a defeat and cultural rejection. What comes next? I can't imagine anyone writing this about the Republican Party in 2021.
No.
Like, well, they were defeated. Now they're just lost. They don't even know what they want. Maybe they should rethink who they are and why they're there. Nobody thought that. They thought, oh, these assholes are going to come back they're going to remain essentially unchanged. They're not going to learn a fucking thing, but they're going to find a bigger demagogue to stick in front of their party because that's who they are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And they did find a bigger demagogue. It just happened to still be Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Quote from the New York fucking Times. Democrats are increasingly perceived as the party of college-educated elites, the defenders of a political and economic system that most Americans feel is failing them. Okay, fair. The first challenge is that it is not just Republicans and independents who have soured on the Democratic Party. It is also Democrats themselves. The Democratic base is aghast at the speed with which Mr. Trump is undermining institutions and reversing progressive accomplishments, and at the lack of resistance from congressional leaders. Primary challenges are on the rise headed into 2026, often along generational and ideological lines. Now, this is the part that gets me. Now, top party officials, activists, and donors are broadly weighing how to rebuild and reassessing how to speak to voters, how to listen to them, and how to reach those who have tuned out entirely. The party has to find ways to compete in states where it's not, said Jamie Harrison, who stepped down in February as the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. For now, Democratic donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working-class voters, commissioning new projects that can read like anthropological studies of people from faraway places. The prospectus for one new $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality. They mean going viral in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things. Above all, we must shift from a moralizing tone, it urges. The 2022 midterms masked the Biden problem, he said, of the former president's age. A good 2026 midterm, we should not let that mask a deeper problem. This is still Jamie Harrison talking.
Mm-hmm.
He added that Democrats had lost credibility by being seen as alien on cultural issues, unquote.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think this $20 million Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan. They say that this is aiming to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men.
Uh-huh.
That's what it's labeled as doing. It's actually aiming to separate credulous millionaires from their money.
Yeah. Yeah.
These things are, and also perhaps to get the attention of a leading candidate so that you can get hired for $20 million to work in Iowa and North Carolina and New Hampshire or wherever the primaries are going to be.
I would like to also point out that the words syntax, virality, and moralizing are all very big words that I find very insulting.
I find it insulting that they went to a luxury hotel and didn't invite me.
Yeah.
I love luxury hotels.
I know you do.
I don't get to stay in them.
I also, this article is so rich and glorious. It recommends buying ads on video games, which is just hilarious.
Yeah,
because
it's what I said, Driftglass. It's blondes with big boobs reading Tom Hartman columns.
Now, those ads I can get behind, 100%.
Strippers.
Strippers.
This is what Fox News does right. The crotch couch has leggy people in fuck me pumps saying conservative nonsense and nodding.
Mm-hmm. No,
and
I think
it's brainwashing, and it works.
I think what we need is in the middle of Call of Duty, 60 seconds of Chuck Schumer talking about soup. And intersectionality, because he talks about that a lot.
No, he doesn't.
He
never talks about that. He does talk about soup.
He does
not talk about intersectionality.
Hello, fellow gamers. and maybe in a Batman voice that would sound, really like, hello. Yeah. I am the knight. I am soup. But if you read this thing like we do as writers, because we like words and we're not afraid of words do not off-put us. When I'm doing the crossword puzzle of my father-in-law, if I hit a word I've never seen before, heard before, I'm delighted by that.
Right.
I think that's fucking awesome. And I try to use it in a sentence, which we used to do, read it, learn it, use it in a sentence used to be words to live by, not something to be afraid of. But, I'm old and that's the way things are. But if you read these articles, especially the New York Times one, you will notice the degree of passivity in the voice.
Yeah.
And that's why there's nobody at that table from the Professional Left podcast. Because if someone's going to stand up and say, we need to reassess how to speak to voters, the first question would be, which voters are you talking about?
Right.
Because there are very distinct differences between species of voters.
Class, what do you think the gender and race mix-up of the Democratic donors and strategists gathering in luxury hotels?
92% white, 96% male.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing. I'm just guessing. I don't know for sure because I'm not invited to those things.
We aren't invited, but yeah. I mean, you're listening to white people right now. I understand that.
Yeah.
But this story and the Rahm Emanuel clickbait stuff, and that all of a sudden this week is within this circle, Rahm Emanuel teasing a run that has something in common, which is a complete walling off of Democratic voters.
Right. They don't want to hear from Democratic voters.
They don't want to hear from Democratic voters. They want to talk to Democratic voters. They want to talk to independent, quote unquote, independent, but they take the Democratic base completely for granted.
Yeah.
And they're ignoring them.
And who that base is? It doesn't look like us.
It's black women. And it's young, hopefully young women.
Yeah.
There was an article that I actually cross-posted at Crooks and Liars today from another blogger, Left Jabber, who does left jabs.
Yeah.
Talking about Jessica Valenti. And what the hell happened to the abortion issue? Why aren't Democrats talking about the abortion issue every single day?
It's gone.
It's gone. And state by state by state, it's killing women. White women are dying of pregnancy.
Well, and here's something I don't have an answer to, but I do have a question, which is, And I heard this earlier today yesterday on some podcast about why aren't Democrats more up in arms about Medicaid cuts?
Yeah, we are.
And the answer was they are. The question is, if a Democrat is shouting Medicaid cuts will kill people in a forest, and there's no liberal media to get it out to anyone other than people who listen to them already, does it make a sound? The answer is no.
No.
All
it's
these
in your
people,
Substack emails, the 200 Substack emails they get every week. It's there.
And Republicans get their talking points straight from the White House.
Yeah.
Republican-based voters and from Fox News. They know exactly what to say and how to rebut with lies, by the way, with lies, every argument everybody raises. Oh, tax cuts actually increase revenue. Everyone knows that. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Medicaid cuts won't even kick in until 2026. And there's a work requirement. They're not kicking anybody off. They know what to say. They've all been trained like good trained SEALs to do exactly what they're supposed to do. There is no equivalent on the left at all to tell people. As much as you're angry at the Democrat, I hear this all the time. I know you do too. I know lots of people do. Why aren't Democrats screaming from the rooftops? Some of them are. There is no microphone for them to scream into to be heard by anybody outside of their bubble. Who is to blame for that? Well, I would start with the millionaires and billionaires who are at luxury hotels who won't pay for a fucking liberal media. Yeah. They'll pay for media strategies. They'll pay for consultants. They'll pay for nice meals. And I did read this article and it read like a restaurant review with some politics inside. You know, over the asparagus au gratin and the steak tartare. And it was like room by room, what the room smelled like, who was in which room, what luxury appointments there were. These rich people talked about this shit. The one thing they didn't talk about was how to get the messages to the people, which leads to the second problem. If you read what Jamie Harrison said at the very end of the article, he added the Democrats had lost credibility by being seen as alien. Seen as alien by whom?
By whom?
And how did that get into their heads? This is a question I've asked on this podcast before. The imaginary community, which I know offends some people, let's call it cousin fuck instead of sister fuck. Cousin fuck Arkansas. The little community of cousin fuck Arkansas, which is full of typical Republican voters who hate us and hate our big words. How the hell do they know what the hell is going on in the Harvard faculty lounge that makes them so mad at us elitists? How do they know? Where are they? Are they subscribers to the Crimson? Do they get Harvard Magazine?
They're hearing it from Jesse Waters. That's where they're hearing it from.
So we have lost credibility by being seen as alien on cultural issues because these people hear about us second and third hand from people who hate us, not by us.
And they open their toilet seat heads and let Jesse Waters take a dump. Yeah. And that's their political thought, period.
And unless you and I and the rest of us were prepared to storm Fox Studios and take over their broadcasting.
Right. At gunpoint,
then those people are never going to hear from us. So I don't know. Again, the passivity in the voice that would at least be challenged if there was somebody there from the Midwest, somebody there who were an actual liberal living in the real world in a middle class life in a little house in the middle of middle America would ask, okay, seen by who? It's just because we've been seen as who is seeing us this way, and why do they see us this way? Where are they getting their information from? Like sticking, dye into someone's arm if you're doing an MRI or you're doing a CAT scan or something. This is traceable.
Yes.
Where are they getting their information from? And I guarantee you it is from hostile sources. So the correct...
that are very well funded.
So the correct question is...
the liberal blogosphere and podcastosphere, yes.
Democrats are thought poorly of because enormously well-funded propaganda machines are pumping poison into the ecosphere that's leaching over into the legacy media who wants to make sure that both sides are represented. That's the problem.
Wants access. Who wants access to those in power, which right now is Trump and Republicans.
Right.
And that has come out recently too, that the whole thing, I kept wondering, why is it that a convicted felon got elected president of the United States? Why didn't he lose by 30 points? Part of it was misogyny and racism.
Yeah.
And part of it was a media system that wanted access to the Trump campaign to cover both sides.
Well, yeah. And this is
and
why.
The rule for covering the Trump campaign was you never said convicted felon.
Right. And this is why Jake Tapper and his people are getting all the media play in the world.
Yep.
And Donald Trump's obvious sundowning narcissistic dementia is getting no play at all.
It's not the dementia, it's the cover-up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And last thing, this $20 million effort recommends, above all, we must shift from a moralizing tone. And because that alienates people, apparently. Have you read Donald Trump's Memorial Day address to the nation? Have you read?
No, because no one provides an actual transcript of what he says except liberals.
I know. Have you heard his speech to West Point, where he said, basically, I did everything right because God chose me. Isn't that fucking awesome? Which is more or less
in a MAGA hat.
In a fucking MAGA hat. And he just bolted to play golf after that.
Yeah.
The Republican Party does nothing but moralize about their moral superiority and the evilness. So I get me here when I need information. I need further information from these people meeting in this hotel about why do we have to shift away from moralizing tone when all we're saying is hurting people is immoral.
Yeah.
Starving people is immoral. Kicking people off of their health care is immoral. And the degenerate in the White House is immoral because all of that is true. If moralizing tones hurt
taking
politics,
bribes is immoral.
Yeah. And if moralizing tones hurt politics, then why were they called the moral majority?
Yeah.
Why did these evangelical preachers have such sway over these people? It's such a dumb argument.
It's telling cousin fuck Arkansas to grow a little bit.
Right.
Is what we're not allowed to do.
Right. It's not enough to be saved at all.
Right.
It ain't enough to be saved, kid. You got to be good too. You got to be decent. You got to read the parts of the Bible that you don't like and make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that. They certainly don't want to hear it from somebody who
just want to be not perfect but forgiven.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why ads in Batman Arkham City are the answer to this problem, Blue Cat.
I'm serious. Strippers. Reading Tom Hartman columns is what we need. Strippers.
I couldn't agree more.
Strippers. Okay.
Now, you would like to talk about boring lawsuits, I think.
My
is that right?
favorite story of the week because of the twist. It's got a twist to it.
It's clever. It's clever.
It's clever. All right. The Freedom of the Press Foundation, which, as you may know, First Amendment, nonprofit, etc.
Right.
Okay, so they're going to sue Paramount to try to stop them from paying bribes to Donald Trump, right?
Right.
But here's the twist. This is from Common Dreams. Quote, if Paramount Global, the parent company of CBS News, settles a $20 billion lawsuit brought by Donald Trump, it could face another lawsuit from a leading press freedom organization, the Freedom of the Press Foundation, FPF, and here's the twist, which is a Paramount shareholder. What? They notified company executives in a letter on Friday that a settlement with Trump could amount to a bribe to the president and his administration for their approving and not impeding a merger of Paramount and the entertainment company Skydance. I am writing to demand that you institute an immediate litigation hold as FPF plans to file a shareholder derivative lawsuit on behalf of Paramount in the event of a settlement by Paramount, wrote Seth Stern, FPF's Director of Advocacy. We expect that other long-term shareholders will join the lawsuit. FPF notes that a derivative lawsuit is a procedure that allows shareholders of a company to recover damages incurred due to impropriety by executives and directors. So I imagine that the damages come from the directors. Think about that.
Yeah.
Any damages award would go back to the company, Paramount, not to FPF. So they're not looking at this for the money. They want to stop the behavior of Paramount suits upstairs. The lawsuit warning comes after a trio of U.S. senators, and our listeners can well imagine who the trio of U.S. senators is, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah.
The trio of U.S. senators cautioned that Paramount may be engaging in potentially illegal conduct by pursuing a settlement with Trump in exchange for approval of the Skydance merger. All these maybe things, Trump isn't saying maybe. It's absolutely quid pro quo, because it always is.
Yeah.
Paramount appears to be attempting to appease the administration in order to secure merger approval, wrote Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Ron Wyden in a May 19th letter to Sherry Redstone, who's the largest shareholder at Paramount. And she's also MAGA, by the way. Internally, Paramount executives have acknowledged that settling the Trump suit could expose directors and officers to liability. There we go. The money's going to come from directors and officers.
Uh-huh.
In potential future shareholder litigation or criminal charges for bribing a public official. So all this corporation stuff is not going to protect them. Getting back to the article. In a statement on Friday, Stern said that corporations that own news outlets should not be in the business of settling baseless lawsuits that clearly violate the First Amendment and put other media outlets at risk. I agree with every word there except should.
Yeah.
A settlement of Trump's meritless lawsuit may well be a thinly veiled effort to launder bribes through the court system, said Stern. Not only would it tank CBS's reputation, to which I say ship sailed, but as 3 U.S. senators recently explained, it could put Paramount executives at risk of breaking the law. Our mission as a press freedom organization is to defend the rights of journalists and the public, not the financial interests of corporate higher-ups who turn their backs on them. When you run a news organization, you have the responsibility to protect First Amendment rights, not abandon them to line your own pockets, Stern added. We hope Paramount will reconsider the dangerous path it appears to be contemplating. But if not, we are prepared to pursue our rights as shareholders, and we hope other Paramount shareholders would join us. And so this is a twist on my adage that I have said multiple times on this podcast this year, which is if all you care about is shareholder value as a leader of a company, you're going to lose your company, and you deserve to. And here comes a group of activist shareholders to tell this company to behave itself.
Yeah, who know the rules and the law.
Yeah, and have standing as shareholders in the company.
And are operating within the 4 corners of corporate law.
Yep.
They're not threatening anything other than what they're legally entitled to do.
Yeah.
And Trump makes it easy. Because he basically says, yeah, you give me the money, I'll give you your merger. And Trump,
he filed the $2 billion lawsuit against CBS for exactly that reason.
$20 billion.
Oh, excuse me, $20 billion.
$20 billion.
Whatever, the highest massive amount I can possibly do.
The biggest, strongest, most powerful lawsuit. Yeah, it's a gazillion
so that you'll
dollars.
settle. Because I know about settling. Everybody settles with me for big money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
And
Drift glass.
Finally,
what have you got to say?
Speaking of Donald Trump, for the umpteenth time this week, we found the example of the fact that the both sides do it lie is always, always, always the last refuge of the worst people. And who is the worst person in the world? This was Donald Trump.
Actually.
That's a tough one. That's a toughie, but I think we all have someone in mind. This was Donald Trump on the subject of Ukraine last year.
I will prevent, and very easily, World War III, very easily. Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly. I will get the problem solved, and I will get it solved in rapid order, and it will take me no longer than one day. I know exactly what to say to each of them. I got along very well with them.
And this is Donald Trump on his shitty social media site yesterday. Quote, I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He's gone absolutely crazy, all caps. He's needlessly killing a lot of people, and not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities, capital C, just random capital letters throughout this.
Right.
In Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, which he never did say, not just a piece of it, and maybe that's proving to be right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia! ! So, okay, fine. And then comes the turn. Likewise, President Zelensky is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. And that, in this long, rambling tweet, is the only actual implied threat to anyone to do anything.
Yeah.
He's wagging his fingers and telling Zelensky, not this whole thing better stop, but the words coming out of your mouth better stop. And he's shocked that Vladimir Putin is doing these things because he thought he was his friend. He's my friend, and I can solve this on day one because I know this guy. I know these people. I blow in a call. It's all over.
Yeah.
This is a war, capital W, that would never have started if I were president. This is Zelensky's, Putin's, and Biden's war, not Trump's, third person, because he's a psychopath. I'm only helping to put out the big and ugly fire that have been started through gross, capital G, incompetence, capital I, and hatred, capital H, unquote. Now, imagine how desperate things must be up at Mara Crypto on the Potomac for Mr. Only I Can Solve It to not just break out the both sides do it lie, but move it all the way to its end state. The everybody but me is responsible lie.
Yep. No, he also gives the game away in another True Social post, basically saying, I've had a great relationship with Putin and be helping him. And it's like, you've been helping Putin?
Yes, he has.
Do what?
He's a brain damaged toddler.
Yeah.
And he really thinks Vladimir Putin and other dictators are his friends, and they're playing him like a $2 banjo, and have been the whole time. And everybody except the MAGA fucking base can see it, and no one will talk about it in the legacy media. They'll just sort of
because they want access to the White House.
Yeah, and then we get sued.
Yeah, for $20 billion, Driftglass.
Maybe $1 trillion.
Or maybe stop their merger.
Why not $1 trillion?
I might lose my job if I don't have access to the White House.
Oh, it's very sad.
Hey guys, feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service, go Postal Unions letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Let me add one thing, Driftglass, if you don't mind.
Please.
Update on the younger people in St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
Both have power.
Yeah.
Middle child is visiting some friends right now and not in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be going back to St. Louis this weekend and is expecting to be put into another unit within the same building that has power and windows while their unit is repaired. And youngest child is back in their apartment. It doesn't have aluminum siding on it, but that will be repaired at some point. And they are very grateful. A couple of people have sent us money to help them. I mentioned to them at the time that I was recording that podcast last week with both of them, do you want me to do a GoFundMe for you guys? And both of them, and I asked them separately, and both of them said the same thing. They said there are way many more people in St. Louis who are worse off than we are.
Yep. Boy.
And so they did not want to do any fundraising for themselves. And, but I am grateful the people that from our podcast listenership who very generously said, please help your daughters with this money. You guys are great. Yeah. And we did. We did make sure that benefited them directly, and appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Sweet thing to do. And I got to say, you raised those kids right, honey. You really did.
Yeah. I mean, we did that even when we were on food stamps. We would give money at Christmas time, drop a quarter in the can or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I would always say for people less fortunate than us.
Yeah.
And then we go in and buy groceries with food stamps. I mean, that's what you do.
Yep. And here we are today at the end of our show, apparently. So I have to keep talking. And I have to tell you this. Now listen very carefully, because I'm not going to repeat myself. please share this show, if at all possible, on the social media. Don't go over to Truth Social and share this show.
No.
Please don't do that. Please. We don't want those. We do get some hate mail, and it always cracks me up about.
Oh, from bottom feeders at YouTube. It's hilarious.
They're the dumbest people, and they say the dumbest thing. And I get just enough of that as like seasoning in my life. That's why I really don't want us to succeed any more than we've already succeeded, Blue Gal, because at this level we're hovering just below the hate mail jet stream.
Oh yeah.
So I think we're perfect at this level. Except we're going to blow it tomorrow because we're supposed to be on with Mr. Robert Seska, I believe his name is.
Yes, we're going to be on Bob Seska tomorrow.
Yeah.
So Wednesday we will be on Bob Seska show.
It's a busy week. It's a very busy week.
It really is.
But we love you. And if you love this podcast, please try to get someone else to listen to it. We do appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties have shared with me that they have not yet ruled out a 2028 White House run.
Internet Kitties 2028.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.